I've been using the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra for a little over a month now, and I have to say this device has been refined to perfection. It may look pretty similar to last year's S22 Ultra, but large improvements have been made here in terms of camera, performance, and optimizations. This is TechNick, and this is my full review of Samsung's most incredible flagship to date, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. As with previous Samsung flagships, the device is quite expensive. It starts at just over 30,000 Rand. And as mentioned at the start, the design is very similar to last year, but this time it feels a lot more solid and looks slightly beefed up. For starters, the camera sensors on the back are larger and have wider rims wrapping around each lens, which are different colors depending on which color you decide to pick up. That said, there are 4 colors you can choose from, including the one that I have, which is green. There's also lavender, cream, and phantom black. The backplate has a soft matte finish, which is protected by Gorilla Glass Victus 2. And another noticeable design change are the aluminum frames, since they are now more squared off, which I really like. It feels more solid in the hand and honestly more premium. The good thing is that these boxy frames don't add to thickness, since it comes in at the exact same thickness as its predecessor. However, it is a tad heavier this time around. Of course, we can't forget about the S23 Ultra's special weapon, the S Pen. The design and look of the stylus is identical to last year's as well. The clicky cap of the pen matches the color of the frames, and the pen itself is black, regardless of which color you decide to pick up. It may look similar, but there are a few new features which we'll check out a little later on in the video. The phone is still IP68 dust and water resistant, but this time the front panel is protected by Gorilla Glass Victus 2. Speaking of the front panel, the display is largely unchanged, but this time it's slightly more flat on the edges. It still has that luxurious curve, though more subtle now, which means you kind of get the best of both worlds. It's a 6.8-inch 1:120Hz LTPO 2.0 dynamic AMOLED display, which has a 240Hz touch sampling rate, pushes out 501 pixels per inch thanks to its WQHD+ resolution, and can reach a peak brightness of 1750 nits. It's an 8-bit display that supports HDR10, HDR10+, and Widevine L1. So while the display is pretty similar to last year, the Vision Booster feature has now been improved since it offers more adaptive stages of tones, color, and brightness levels dependent on how well lit your environment is. When it comes to software, the S23 Ultra runs One UI 5.1 skinned over Android 13. Samsung has largely improved general performance and fluidity thanks to its new optimizations, which allow for more fluid animations and transitions. This means the phone now feels smoother and faster, with everything being more responsive. You can now also stack widgets, and once stacked, can be shifted with a simple swipe on the widget. And Samsung have now introduced something called modes and routines, where you can choose a mode based on your current activity and customize things based on that activity, such as adjusting sound profiles, display settings, notifications, and more. Now, of course, this is an Ultra device, so it packs in the S Pen, which can be used largely in relation to your software experience with the phone. You can create a note to doodle around, jot down something important, or even write to text if you'd like to keep things neat. You can also screen write, which allows for quickly doodling on a screenshot, take custom screenshots, magnify things to make them easier to see, and even use gestures in Gallery, for example, where you can switch between photos without touching the screen. And since we're in Gallery, it's worth mentioning that you can remove a subject from a background in a photo or erase a background object with or without the S Pen in hand. And when the camera app is open with the S Pen in hand, you can use your stylus to take a photo, flick between back and selfie cameras, and even zoom in and out. And one of the least mentioned features, which I actually use quite a lot, is the ability to control your music with your S Pen. And lastly, when it comes to software updates, Samsung promises 4 years of major Android updates and 5 years of security updates. And to keep things running is the same large 5000 mAh battery, but due to the new chipsets as well as improved optimizations, it lasts a lot longer. And based on my recent battery drain test results, it managed to get almost 9 hours of screen on time, which is almost an hour and a half more than last year's Ultra. So battery life has certainly improved, but charging is identical. We have the same 45-watt wide charging, which Samsung now claims can get your phone to 65% in just 30 minutes, and there's still 15-watt wireless charging. The S23 Ultra also features a newly improved, larger vapor chamber liquid cooling system, which makes it an absolute beast when paired up with its new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy chipset. It's identical to the regular 8 Gen 2 chip, but has a higher main core clock speed of 3.36 GHz as opposed to the 3.2 GHz standard. So it's no surprise to see it perform phenomenally well in all different kinds of benchmark tests. Needless to say, it performs similarly to phones that rock the regular Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip. It also packs in faster LPDDR5X RAM, as well as next-gen UFS 4.0 storage, which has now become a staple for 2023 flagship devices. All of these specs not only aid in smooth, rapid daily tasks and high benchmark scores, but they also translate to fantastic gaming performance, and thanks to its high refresh rate panel, we were able to get a rock-solid 120 FPS on average when playing Real Racing 3. And it's a breeze to track FPS since the phone has a GPU watch widget tool which you can enable in developer options. And if you are in the mood for a graphically good-looking shooter, such as Call of Duty Mobile, you'll be happy to know that the S23 Ultra can achieve a solid average 90 FPS when the game is set to ultra frame rate mode. The Galaxy S23 Ultra also has a gaming trick up its sleeve, something called Pause USB power delivery, which was introduced with the new S23 lineup. When active, the phone pauses charging and draws power directly from the charger instead of the battery, so it prevents the phone from charging and draining at the same time, which in turn prevents overheating and throttling. Not to mention, it also results in better performance and aids in better battery health since there is no stress on the battery since it isn't charging during gameplay. This is very much a feature you only really see on gaming-centric devices, so it's really good to see Samsung become more gaming focused. And when playing a more demanding game such as Genshin Impact, it's good to see that the phone can push a stable 60 FPS. But after playing games for a while, I did notice slight frame drops. It's also worth mentioning that this game is capped at 60 FPS on all devices regardless of the screen refresh rate. This Samsung flagship also makes use of USB 3.2, Bluetooth 5.3, UWB, NFC, dual SIM 5G, and Wi-Fi 6E to ensure you're always connected to the world. And though its haptics motor is largely unchanged, its dual stereo speaker system, which is found in the bottom frame and the top earpiece, has improved quite a bit in terms of loudness, depth, and clarity. The phone also supports Dolby Atmos as well as Dolby Atmos for gaming. So Samsung have finally built a solid relationship with Qualcomm and have put their latest chipset in Samsung's latest flagship device, and it delivers. I mean really delivers in performance in terms of gaming, benchmarks, connectivity, as well as audio. Another thing that Samsung have changed up this year is the selfie camera. It's still a small punch hole at the top center of its display, but the actual sensor is different. This time they have taken favor of processing power over megapixel count. It's a 12 megapixel 26mm f2.2 selfie camera with dual pixel phase detection autofocus and has up to 80 degrees field of view. The 12 megapixel selfie camera on the S23 Ultra proves that it's not all about high megapixels, and due to this new sensor, Samsung were able to improve image processing, light handling, and separate subjects from their backgrounds more clearly, which aids in fantastic detail and near perfect edge detection. What's up guys, this is TechNick recording a 4K 30 FPS portrait video on the brand new Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. And when you decide to disable portrait mode, you can go all the way up to 4K 60 FPS using the selfie cam on the S23 Ultra. Let me know your thoughts on the audio as well as the video quality when using the selfie cam. 4K 60 FPS selfie video is fantastic to have, and Samsung nails it during the day, and selfie videos come out great at night too when set to 30 FPS, which allows things to brighten up but in turn becomes a tad grainy. There's still noise when set to portrait video at night, but 4K 30fps portrait video has superb edge detection whether filming in daylight or at night. Selfies at night come out decently too, with little to no noise, but come out best when set to portrait mode, especially with the screen flash enabled, which results in natural, detailed looking shots that offer great edge detection. For better or worse, Samsung have changed up the selfie camera this year, and even though the megapixel count has dropped, I must say the improved image processing does wonders in terms of taking photos using the selfie camera in a day or night situation, or even when recording 4K video all the way up to 60 FPS. There are very few Android flagships out there that nail, and I mean really nail, the selfie camera performance. and the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is one of those devices. When it comes to back cameras, the S23 Ultra houses 3 identical cameras to last year's model, that being the ultra-wide, the telephoto, and the periscope. The ultra-wide camera is still a 13mm 12MP 1 in 2.55 inch sensor size sensor, but now uses a newer Sony IMX564 sensor instead of last year's IMX563. The 2 zoom cameras, one being a 3x telephoto and the other being a 10x periscope, are both the same IMX754 sensors we saw in its predecessor. They are both 10MP and they both offer dual pixel PDAF and optical image stabilization. So these 3 cameras may be identical to last year's S22 Ultra, but we should see some very much improved processing thanks to the new Qualcomm chipset, as well as Samsung's own image processing technique. All that said, the S23 Ultra does have a 4th camera on the back, and of course that being the main camera, which has seen the largest improvement this year. It's a whopping 23mm 200MP Samsung made ISOCELL HP2 sensor with a staggering 1 in 1.3 inch sensor size, an f1.7 aperture, and benefits from multi-directional PDAF, laser autofocus, and optical image stabilization. OIS has seen a pretty big improvement here too, since it has a 2 times wider OIS angle, which also aids in improved video stabilization thanks to adaptive VDIS, which analyzes and subdivides movements and recognizes different lighting conditions. Detail is insane when set to the native 200MP mode, and this is evident when cropping in by an insane amount. It's not something you would immediately notice when you take a snap without cropping in, but you would no doubt see the difference when blowing up the image on a large TV, or even print one of these 200MP photos and throw it onto a canvas. 200MP might not be practical for most, so there is a 50MP mode, which uses 4:1 pixel binning, and the main purpose of this mode is to alleviate backlight noise, and as you can see in these pics, the S23 Ultra dampens down the sunlight in the background to retain overall image clarity and detail. The main sensor isn't made for super close-up shots, but that's where the ultra-wide camera comes in, which results in very detailed macro shots. Taking regular ultra-wide shots come out fantastic too, with almost no distortion, and thanks to great image processing, color accuracy is identical between the ultra-wide and main sensor, as you can see with the main sensor here. This photo is actually using 16:1 pixel binning, which drops the 200MP output to 12.5MP and then crops in slightly for a 12MP result. And even with moving objects in the frame, things still come out crisp. 3x optical zoom using the telephoto camera produces a less saturated shot as opposed to the ultra-wide and main photos we just saw. The telephoto is still used at 5x hybrid zoom, which tends to have more noise. This noise is fixed when the periscope sensor kicks in for 10x optical zoom, which still looks incredible. I mean, how many phones out there have a 10x optical zoom camera? 30x digital zoom using the periscope brings back the noise again, but you can still make out what's going on here. But things start to look more and more like a painting when you zoom from 50 to 70 to 100x zoom. But that's completely normal for a smartphone camera zoom, and I must say, the S23 Ultra takes significantly better 100x max zoom shots as opposed to other phones around that have the same zoom capability. Taking portraits with the main camera come out fantastic due to that large sensor size, but the 3x telephoto camera seems to be the sweet spot for when taking portrait shots, which results in DSLR quality images that boast an unmatched edge detection. And you can also use that telephoto cam for 3x optically zoomed portrait videos, which can be filmed in 4K 30fps. You can of course record 4K 30fps portrait video using the main camera as well, and though it looks fantastic, it struggles with edge detection when trying to film a complicated scene. Another thing that Samsung is known for is slow motion video, which you can record at full HD resolution at either 240fps or a crazy 960 FPS when set to the super slow motion option. There is also a hyperlapse mode which can be used at 4K 30 FPS and does wonders for those who like to use time-lapse modes. Not to mention you can seamlessly switch between all 4 cameras when recording continuous 4K 30 FPS video from the ultra-wide to the main to the telephoto to the periscope all the way up to 20 times digital zoom. And of course you can also record 4K 60 FPS ultra-wide video which is insanely stable and filled with saturation and clarity. There is also a super steady mode option for the ultra-wide camera, which caps out at QHD 60 FPS, and I tested this while running around. But there is quite a large crop-in factor here, and the crop-in factor is still present even when using the main camera for super steady video mode, but overall super steady mode is extremely stable thanks to adaptive VDIS. The main camera can also record video at 4K 60 FPS, and the results are phenomenal. And there is also an 8K 30 FPS video option this time around as opposed to last year's 24 FPS, but you can still only record 8K video using the main cam. However, 8K video even at night is a lot more stable and a lot more polished than last year. And when using the main camera to record 4K 30 FPS video at night, there is almost no gain and light noise is controlled quite well. But when shooting 4K 30 FPS video with the ultra-wide camera, things come out a tad more grainy and light noise is very evident here. But all in all, it takes great ultra-wide night video when compared to other phones around. Taking photos at night with night mode enabled, the ultra-wide camera benefits from minimum distortion and tends to handle light noise quite well. The main cam handles light noise even better and retains light and detail thanks to its larger sensor size. The 3x optical telephoto shot handles light noise very well, but tends to take a dip in detail, which is also apparent at 5x hybrid zoom. And 10x optical periscope photos handle light noise the best. I mean, you can almost see the light bulbs perfectly inside the lampposts. 30x and 50x digital zoom shots using the periscope sensor come out okay, but at 70x or even 100x zoom, things come out even more detailed, which is really good to see. And when using the main sensor for portrait shots at night, things come out very detailed with fantastic edge detection. But again, portrait shots come out best when using the telephoto sensor at 3x optical zoom. It would be hard to find a smartphone that can take photos and videos on the same level as the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, which performs insanely well given any light condition. And the thing with Samsung's latest flagship is that it is just so well-rounded, there's very little to complain about. It literally checks all the right boxes under the sun. Or should I say the moon? Samsung has done something different this year. They have focused on refining an incredible smartphone and they have absolutely nailed it. If you want a flagship phone that does it all, then this is the smartphone for you. I'm extremely excited to see what Samsung does next. Let me know your thoughts on what your favorite things are about the S23 Ultra, as well as what you would like to see change in their next iteration. This is TechNick and I'll catch you in the next one.